Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Change Agent Podcast. I'm your host, Tim McBride. This is a platform where I invite local industry leaders, influencers, and agents of change on a local and national scale to join me in conversations and share their stories in hopes to inspire others. I'm excited for today's conversation because this is a topic that I have been aware of, and I think most of us have been aware of, but not really educated in, if you will. And we're talking about it today because today is July 30th and it's the World Day Against Human Trafficking. A recent relationship has come into my wife and I's life, a great organization called Uncommon Giving, and they've created a fund called Save the Children, and they're launching it today in support of World Day Against Human Trafficking. And because this is such an important topic and it has really been put in the spotlight here the last few months, we need to be more educated. We need to be more aware of what human trafficking is, what modern day slavery really is. I know that's a heavy word, but it's something you're hearing a lot about right now. And for me personally, it's something I've always been aware of, but kind of really just observed from the sidelines, never really seen as something that could directly impact me or affect me and my family. It always felt like it was something that was taking place internationally and not locally. So the idea of today's show is to bring on an expert, bring on someone that is working on the front lines and meeting the needs of these victims of this. There is no real demographic. It is something that cuts across all ages, all ethnicities, all nationalities, all social and economic statuses. It is something that is harming human lives every single day, locally and nationally, and we need to be more educated. So the idea is, let's bring on an expert that can share what this industry is from a global standpoint and what it is locally and how it's impacting people's lives and how, more important, we as a community can rally around these groups and how we can get involved. So today I'm excited to have a special guest on, Dr. Angela Salomon. She is the programs director at StreetLight USA right here in Phoenix, and she's also the victim services co-chair for Arizona Human Trafficking Council. So someone that's very involved, very educated, and has been on the front lines here for a long time, working to meet the needs and give hope to a community that may feel hopeless. So if you would, please join me in welcoming my special guest today, Angela. It's such a pleasure to have you here. If you can, before we kind of get into all the details, please introduce yourself and share a little bit of your story.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, and good morning to everyone. Yes, so my name is Angela Salomon, and I'm the Director of Programs for StreetLight USA, like Tim mentioned, and I also co-chair the Victim Services work group for the Arizona Governor's Office of Youth, Faith, and Family. So, we're working very hard at bringing awareness and attention to this issue, especially on a day like today. And so that's who I am in a nutshell. How I got, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, so kind of from, I guess, a background standpoint, have you always kind of been in the nonprofit sector? Have you always aspired to kind of work in the human trafficking kind of realm, the industry itself? A little bit more about kind of your credentials, your background, and your relationship with, StreetLight USA and kind of the industry you're working in.
Yeah, so I ended up working with human trafficking back in 2007, and I was introduced to this issue working through refugee populations. And I was very interested in working with, at a clinical level, working with underserved populations. And so there I came across labor and sex trafficking. It's at the time I was a graduate student for my doctoral degree in clinical psychology. And I was working directly with the kids. I was working with children that were coming in from other countries seeking refuge. And a lot of them were coming in for various reasons, but they were coming in and they were reporting and they were endorsing dynamics that made them a victim of trafficking. And unfortunately, at that point is when I started hearing also some very horrific stories related to sex trafficking. So that just lit a fire in me. It's one of those topics and one of those stories that you hear and you just can't turn away after that, after what you've heard people go through and survived, especially at such a young age. And that just inspired me to continue to work with underserved populations, with trauma. And I combined that with my passion in developing programs. I felt like I could help more at a larger scale working as a developer rather than a one-to-one clinical for myself. So I really found a passion in developing those programs and helping organizations develop clinically relevant programs, culturally responsive programs that met the needs of these kids. So come, 3 years ago, our CEO, Sky Steele, who started the program for human trafficking for adult women at the Phoenix Dream Center, and I came together and we started working with StreetLight USA to redesign the program and help integrate more clinical services that were trauma informed and more integrative services, and while also working with the community, building relationships, teaching on the subject to all groups, everything from electrical companies with staff members that are in homes that may catch certain things that other folks won't because they have more access to homes, to law enforcement, to medical providers. We're just trying to get out there and really share the information that we know in a very humble way, because we don't have, the clinical world is kind of behind the times on this particular population. The churches have worked with it longer, a lot longer than the clinical world. And but just humbly sharing our experiences and working with these populations and working together with everyone else in the community to help each other out and grow faster in that way to catch up with this growing monster of an issue.
So, and I think the fact you saying a monster of an issue, I think is important, because I think that's how a lot of us consume human trafficking, or what I'm seeing a lot of now is modern day slavery. And that's a powerful and a very loaded term. And for me, I kind of been a consumer from the sidelines, because I've always kind of seen it as this monster industry, I've heard up to $150 billion industry. And that's intimidating. And oftentimes the conversation is focused on what's happening internationally, or what's happening in third world countries, and not necessarily right here. And I think that's part of the problem. Is I've always felt disconnected from it, because I've never felt that it's been happening where I live, where I operate, and more importantly, or sadly, where my kids live, where my kids go to school, where we shop, where we interact. So I think it needs to be understood that yes, it's a global epidemic. It's something that is, corrupting and destroying so many lives and communities, but it's also something that's also very local. And we want to bring that conversation back to how we can understand it, get involved. But, I want to first say it's a global epidemic. So what are some things that people need to be aware of when they hear human trafficking, when they hear modern day slavery? What are some things that people can identify with to help them better understand it?
One of the main things that I like to highlight is that it doesn't take a financial exchange to exploit a human being. The psychological manipulation that is involved with exploiting human beings is very strong, and it's probably the strongest force driving that industry, is that they create these, what we call in the clinical world, trauma bonds with the victims. And so the victims a lot of times don't even identify as victims. They don't realize that they're being exploited and they're being abused. So that's number one, is that I think there's a misunderstanding at times that it has to be a financial exchange of sorts, or it has to be a business of sorts, but that doesn't have to be the case, and certainly not the case for children. So that's the biggest thing. The second thing is that because so many cases go unreported, our global estimation of the cases that are happening, the situations that are happening, there's like a huge gap. It's like 20 to 40 million, like is a very, very huge range, right, to cover. And so we have those gaps in our data because of all the cases that go unreported. So we just have estimates based on what we know of the dynamics in certain populations that might increase those odds.
So off of that, who are the victims? If you like, is there a way to kind of, I don't want to say put a face to the victim, but oftentimes the struggle is really who is being trafficked, and who is a trafficker. So, I think a lot of the work, obviously, you guys are doing here locally is in the adolescent community, the youth, and with females, but it's not just that category, correct? It can be almost
Right.
anyone.
It can. I mean, we have different types of trafficking. We put them into the categories of labor trafficking and sex trafficking. What we know of sex trafficking is that it's primarily women and young girls. And the buyer data shows is primarily, it's like in the 90% male. We know that this population is not something, it's usually better tracked in homeless populations because we have that data for it, but it's happening in, quote unquote, good schools, safe schools. It's happening in 2-parent households. And it really doesn't discriminate against who is a potential victim, because the traffickers look for vulnerabilities in what that person may lack in their lives. So it doesn't have to be a financial lack. It could be a lack of attention, a lack of time. Sometimes it is a financial need or financial desires, wants. So whenever we've talked and we collaborate with law enforcement and we talk to folks that are doing like the undercover cool work with getting in there and doing some ops, that I find so fascinating. It's really disturbing how quickly they can get lured if they set up these mock, potential victims, whether they're child or adult, how quickly they can get lured in social media, in malls, Scottsdale Fashion Square. I think if we fall into a sense that are not my child or not in my area, then that puts us at a higher vulnerability for having our children be exploited.
Wow. So now coming locally, this industry exists in all 50 states, right? It's not something that's particular to one community or one city. It's happening all around us. Would you mind, sharing a little bit about StreetLight USA and who you guys are and the work you're doing within this industry and the results you're seeing?
Yes, absolutely. So StreetLight USA was founded back, it opened its doors back in 2011. And it was really the collaboration of 75 churches here in the Valley that came together. Wow. Again, the ministry has been really the leading force in this work for many years before the clinical world came in to support. So they came together. Their mission was to help these children that have been exploited. That was their heart. And they came together, opened up the facility. And since 2011, we've helped over 1,300 children. Wow. In the last 3 years, like I mentioned, we've integrated a lot of what we know in the clinical field to make the programs more integrative. So we include the Christ-centered services, we include the clinical services, we include trauma-informed academics, and we work very closely with Phoenix Children's Hospital to provide them trauma-informed medical care as well. And again, we work very closely with law enforcement. We want to help rewrite their stories and their relationships with law enforcement to help these victims see law enforcement as a source of support and protection rather than a threat, which is what most of them come in, having been trained in believing. So our programs are very, very, very integrative. We work a lot with body-based strategies to help the trauma because of the age ranges that we work with. We work with girls that are 13 to 17. Wow. And our average age for one of our clients is 15 to 16. So that's StreetLight in a nutshell. We're continuing to grow and work. We see where the gaps are, where the needs are. There's still a huge gap, not just in Arizona, but worldwide for LGBTQ services and services for male victims.
So with that in the adolescent space, there's a partnership with the Phoenix Dream Center. Is that correct too? So there's collaboration happening across the board. So no matter where someone may be in terms of the trafficking, again, realm, there's
Right.
resources and groups available to them, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So the Phoenix Dream Center has provide services for the adult population.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we specialize in the adolescent population,
And but
female adolescent.
female, okay. And it's 24/7. It's like, it's an actual, you have accommodations for these
We
kids so you
are.
can take them out of their environment and put them in a protective space, right?
We're a residential facility, so we have two different programs at Streetlight. Three coming soon, but
Mhm.
two currently. One of them is placement for children that are in DCS, the system, the Child Protective System. We provide them housing and we provide them support services that are trauma informed specifically for what we call CSEC, which is commercial sexual exploitation of children. So we provide them that support. Again, we provide them that in-house trauma-informed academics, case management, behavioral support. And then we also have a program that we call a behavioral health residential facility. And that's a residential facility where a child comes in for 45 to 90 days exclusively for treatment of this type of trauma. So we see what we call a very high acuity type of trauma, very complex. It's really along the lines of working with like a victim of torture when you're working clinically with this population. So they're with us 45 to 90 days, and they're engaged in intensive clinical treatment, and they also have the additional services to complement it. We have like equine-based coping skills groups. We have healing vibes. We call it healing vibes. So it's like music therapy. We provide them various, so we have a healing arts series where we integrate art and the concept of healing from a clinical, but also from a cultural and diversity perspective. So we try to integrate those things together. And of course, also trauma-informed academics so that they can continue moving forward.
And all this information is available on the website, correct? So if people want to
It
dive in
is.
a little more and really understand it, and we'll make sure all that
Absolutely.
information gets shared at the end. It'll be in the write up too underneath.
Thank you.
But one thing we've all been dealing with is COVID-19, right? Our world changed dramatically, and we just kind of had to adapt. And I've had the opportunity with my Homes for Good platform to really kind of interact, engage with a lot of local nonprofits, and hear how they're just finding ways to stay afloat and continue to lean in and be of service to their mission and why. And I personally draw a lot of inspiration from that. Me just being a residential real estate agent, my business has been able to thrive because people still need to buy and sell no matter what. But your industry is so different, and human lives are at stake. And I have to imagine COVID-19 has had a pretty dramatic impact on the work you guys are doing and the effects it's having on these adolescent girls.
Right. The impact has come more in a requirement to act quickly, right? So taking action very quickly to make sure that we were updating our procedures from a health perspective, and also providing procedures to support our staff so that we could sustain the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation. What we've seen more with COVID are variances in what it looks like for the trafficking arena out on the streets. So, before we were starting to see, when Backpage was taken off, we started to see a lot of street work again, in the communities. And then now with COVID, we knew that there was going to be a spike in internet-based and porn-based use, and the buyers through social media and the internet. So the dynamics of the buying changed quite a bit. The dynamics from a provider's perspective, it was really just ensuring that we had all of our procedures in place so that we could respond pretty quickly and keep our residents safe. That's really where we've seen the impact. We've been very fortunate. The adolescent group isn't one of the higher groups of being in danger of contracting the virus, but we've been very, very careful. We've implemented a lot of health checks. And again, we've worked very closely with Phoenix Children's Hospital to ensure the safety of our kiddos, and really educating our staff so that they felt safe coming to work as well, and making sure that we didn't see any gaps in service for our residents.
Wow. Well, first and foremost, you guys are superheroes, really, on a lot of levels, and it's such an honor just to have these types of conversations, because the idea of this whole podcast is for people to be aware of people like yourself, resources and organizations like StreetLight USA, that every day go out and meet the needs of a community that is in dire times and are being exploited and being harmed and hurt. And in all of this, for me, I've really been exposed to the battle of kind of good versus evil right now in this world, and you are living and operating probably one of the more evil realities that we have to navigate. And Ashton Kutcher said it really well in a speech he gave a couple years ago about every child has a right to pursue happiness. And I think the work you guys are doing is on that level, is giving these girls, as you say, trauma to triumph, giving them a platform for hope and a future. And just thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
I know you're on a bit of a time crunch here, so I really want to make sure that people understand the work you guys are doing, that you're here locally in Phoenix. You're serving so many lives every single day, and there's always a need for help. So what are some of the best ways people can to get to know StreetLight USA, whether it be the website, social media handles, and what are some of the ways they can get involved, whether it's from time, energy, resources?
Yes, I mean, our volunteer group is precious to us. We operate a lot of our support services and really amplifying the quality of the engagement and the activities and things like that through volunteers that want to work directly with the clients. We also have needs administratively, so volunteer groups are amazing. We have seen a drop in volunteer participation right now just because of COVID, but usually our volunteer base is very, very very large and very much appreciated. And so volunteering, donations, private donations. We also have a wish list through Amazon if someone would prefer to do more specific, meeting the wish of a child. Our website provides more information on donation opportunities or becoming involved. It also has a link for the volunteer opportunities as well, and a wish list on there too.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure all that information is made available. As we kind of come to a close here, what is there any kind of message you want to leave our audience with in terms of how they can either better understand or relate to the trafficking industry and how it's impacting our community, and what is it that they can take away that can make them feel like they can make a difference or be involved?
The most significant thing that I've come across that I think I hope that others can find notable is that I haven't come across a victim that hasn't wanted better, but they were too afraid to hope for better. A lot of times they don't even know what it means to have hope. So when they see that people care and that people are involved, they don't feel as alone, and they feel protected, and they feel like they can do this. They can move past their trauma, and they can become someone different, the person that they were originally meant to be. And the healing process is long, but if we can get them to a point where they have hope and that they believe that people out there care for them, and that there is safety out there, and there is support out there, that we've had girls that graduated, high school and have been the first ones to graduate in their family, and they had come in completely broken. And so when you hear those stories, that's what keeps us going every day.
Wow. Well, that just hit me at the core. Too afraid to hope for better. That, as a father with 3 little ones, I see the innocence in them every single day, and to know that people are preying on them and taking that innocence away and that hope is just disgusting on so many levels. And I just thank you so much for the work you're doing. And like I said, I'm newer to this, to understanding
Yeah.
the true realities and the many layers. And I'm just hopeful that, we can continue to grow and help wherever we can. And, it's just been an honor to quickly put this conversation together, to have you be here and have you share the work you're doing. And I hope that people will just listen and understand this is not something that's happening at a distance. It's happening locally, all around us. And we need to be aware, we need to be understanding, and we need to put our support out there if we're ever going to overcome this. Did I just lose you? Oh, no, I thought I lost you. But I know you've got a busy schedule. Thank you, Angela, so much for joining me. Are there
Thank
any other
you.
ways that people could connect to you personally or ask any questions, or would you
Yeah.
rather direct them through the website? What would you prefer?
My email is angela@streetlightusa.org. I don't know how much help I'd be with answering like questions of volunteering and donations and fundraising. I would just turn it over to that team, but
Okay.
I'm always glad to provide information on the dynamics of trafficking, or know who to refer to if needed, if there's a referral needed. So definitely.
Wonderful. And I forgot to ask you, I wanted to put it in there because, it's happening across the country, Arizona in particular. Where do we stand in terms of, I guess, the battle? Are we one of the stronger states that is putting programs and policies in place to fight it? Or are we where are we in that spectrum, I guess?
Right. We have grown in the last few years. Our strengths are the law enforcement work that is being done out there, getting out there and identifying cases. We're strong in that. We're strong in how active our council, our Human Trafficking Council, is to work integratively with the state. DC came out last year and recognized our efforts and wanted to learn from the state of Arizona as far as our model of integration and working collaboratively with other people in the community, whether it's the medical field or, like I said, we've had electricians and companies that are construction companies and trucking companies and hotels, and we're just there's no one we won't collaborate with to work against this. So those are the areas that are our strengths. We have a strong research base at ASU as well. They provide great information. So that's a great source of information for people, for parents. If you go to the School of Social Work .asu or at asu.edu, that webpage is so amazing, with having a lot of resources for how to talk to your children, how to monitor their internet use, things of that nature.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of information obviously been shared today, and in no way could I ever try to tap into the knowledge that you have and the experience and expertise. So I really hope people take the time to listen to this. And again, today, July 30th, is World Day Against Human Trafficking, and it's happening around the world. So hopefully a lot of people are coming together and starting to be more aware of just this evil that is harming our world and harming our children, those that are vulnerable. I'm excited to get this out there. I'm excited for more people to get involved, myself, my wife included. And we're just grateful for this conversation. And thank you so much for the work you're doing. And when you get back into town, because I know you're in Colorado,
yes,
and the world is a little more regular, we can have a coffee. It'd be great to connect with
definitely. We'd love to have you over at StreetLight and show you what we're doing.
We would love to be.
You're always welcome.
My wife was at the Phoenix Dream Center yesterday doing a tour, and
that's amazing.
She's definitely one that wants to get her feet wet more and more. Yeah. So I'll be alongside her too. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. I'll let you get back to your day, but I really appreciate the conversation. All the information to connect with Dr. Angela Salomon will be available underneath in the comments. We'll make sure it gets out there too on the social media channel. Thank you again to all your team. And safe travels. Be safe, stay healthy, and keep up the good fight.
Thank you so much. Right, likewise. Have a good afternoon.
We'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining me on this episode of The Change Agent. I just want to ask, if you can, spend some time to listen to some of the things that Angela had to say. I think we've all been aware of human trafficking as an evil in this world for a long time, but we really haven't taken the time, and I know, speaking for myself, to really understand the many layers to it, and the fact that it is something that is happening right here in our community and can potentially harm those that we love and those that we know. So take that time, take the energy to investigate, to learn, and if you can find the resources to help, because this is a big problem, and it's going to take community coming together and organizations coming together to really fight back. And it's because of people like Angela, it's because of Streetlight organizations like StreetLight USA and others that we have a chance to defeat it. So thank you for taking the time to listen and understand human trafficking, in simple terms and ways we can potentially get involved. Again, all the information below on StreetLight USA is going to be there. Take a look, educate yourself, understand, what we need to be aware of. And also, I just want to recognize my wife and I have been honored to be ambassadors for a great organization here called Uncommon Giving, specifically their Save the Children Fund. One of the reasons we're doing this today is because it is World Day Against Human Trafficking, and Uncommon Giving is launching what they call a UGIV fund, and it's titled Save the Children. And within this fund are six organizations that are on the front lines every day, 5 of which are national, 1 is local. The local one is StreetLight USA. And if you don't know how to give, these funds is a resource for you to educate yourself, but also put money towards organizations that have been properly vetted and are really fighting against this evil empire that is human trafficking. So check it out, take a look. There'll be a link to this Uncommon Giving UGIV fund. Again, it's called Save the Children. And the 5 organizations in there, I want to make sure I get these correct, are Darkness to Light, Thorn, A21, Our Rescue, and Children Rescue Coalition. And then the local organization is StreetLight USA. So again, the beneficiaries are Darkness to Light, Thorn, A21, Our Rescue, Children Rescue Coalition, and StreetLight USA. So take some time, take a look at these different organizations, learn about them, understand what they're doing, the work they're doing, what they need to accomplish, and how we as citizens can help. So thank you, everybody. I know I learned a lot today. I hope you have, and I'm just going to continue to do my part and educate myself on such an ugly epidemic that is harming so many lives globally and locally. So continue to stay safe, stay healthy, and I look forward to our next episode of the Change Agent podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.